Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Marsha Whitt. She's a metabolic health educator. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Eat Less, Move More Fails for Midlife Weight Loss. Marsha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Dr. Pho.
All right, so you are a metabolic health educator. What led you to write this article in the first place?
Well, while researching for my book on menopause, I came across an interesting statistic that a full 75% of women who ask their doctors for help with menopause symptoms, and which almost always includes fat gain, they don't get the help they need. Some are automatically prescribed hormone replacement, which has its place, but more often than not, they're told that it's just a normal part of aging or that they need to eat less and exercise more. Perimenopause and menopause alone create internal stress in the body. And typically, by the time a woman reaches that stage of life, she's already experiencing the cumulative effects of decades of stress. So, when they're told to eat less and exercise more, that doesn't change the physiology. So, I followed the physiology instead of the narrative.
So, for those who aren't familiar to physiology, or it's been a while since they've learned the physiology, just give us a snapshot view about the changes women go through in perimenopause and menopause that potentially may lead to weight gain.
Sure. What I've been noticing, and what many clinicians see too, is that a lot of women in midlife are doing exactly what they're told. They're eating less, exercising more, trying to be disciplined. And instead of losing body fat, they feel worse. They're more tired, more hungry, they lose strength. Sometimes their bone density declines, and their fat mass either doesn't change or actually increases. And the usual explanation is willpower, aging, or vague hormones, but that doesn't really explain the pattern. What's actually happening is that the physiology of midlife is different. As estrogen and other growth and recovery signals decline, the body shifts into a more conservation oriented state. It becomes more focused on preserving energy, maintaining blood glucose stability, and buffering stress. So fat tissue becomes a kind of safety buffer. Muscle and bone become harder to maintain. Recovery is slower. So when we introduce calorie restriction into that environment, the body doesn't interpret it as burned fat. It interprets it as resources are uncertain. And the appropriate biological response to uncertainty is conservation, not release. So it conserves fat and it becomes willing to sacrifice muscle and bone instead, because those are metabolically expensive tissues to maintain. Exercise adds another layer. Exercise increases demand, which is good. But if recovery capacity is low and fuel regulation is unstable, the system experiences that demand as stress. So appetite increases, cortisol increases, and again, the system becomes more protective of fat mass as a buffer. None of this means the system is broken. It's actually doing exactly what it's been designed to do under those conditions, which is to protect survival. So the clinical shift really isn't about telling people to try harder. It's about changing the target. Instead of suppressing intake, we focus on restoring regulation. Adequate protein, stable glucose, muscle and bone maintenance, sleep, stress, recovery. When the system feels safe again, energetically and hormonally, fat loss often becomes possible, not because we forced it, but because the body no longer needs to defend it.
So it sounds like the traditional medical advice, eat less, move more, especially in perimenopause and menopause, may be doing more harm than good for these women.
That's exactly right. And as women, we're programmed from the time we're teenagers. If you want to lose fat, you've got to reduce your calorie intake. So many of us went on crash diets, 500,000 calories a day. And that actually creates damage inside the mitochondria. And that damage is cumulative over the years. And it makes it more difficult for the body to release fat later.
So you mentioned that you are writing a book on menopause and doing some research. So for these women at this age group, what are some things that they should be doing?
I'd like to focus on four things: hunger, the right kind of food. We have to eat the kind of food that's actually nourishing our bodies, not junk food, not a bunch of sugar that makes it very difficult for the body to do what it's designed to do. When we eat junk food or a bunch of sugar, that creates a release of cortisol because the body's in survival mode. Cortisol, again, makes the body hold on to fat stores. We also have to regulate our stress. The proper kind of food helps to regulate internal stress, but we also have to have a handle on external stress, or namely our response to it. If we get light exposure during the day outside, especially in the mornings, that helps to regulate our circadian rhythm, which makes it possible for us to have adequate sleep. So hunger, stress, light, and sleep, if we can get those down, we're doing well.
So when you said eating the right food, just go in more
Mhm.
detail in terms of what that diet would look like.
Sure. It needs to be nourishing, protein and fat, preferably from animal sources for the higher nutrient density and higher bioavailability. Once we do that, it calms the internal stress signals. The body no longer is questioning whether it's going to get another meal anytime soon. When we have protein and fat coming in on a regular basis, the body can relax.
So, in terms of lowering the glucose exposure, you wrote in your article that allows insulin levels to fall naturally, right? And that can help with the potential weight gain during the perimenopausal phase.
Absolutely. Cortisol is the main driver of fat gain and the body holding on to fat.
Now, what other pieces of advice can you share, or can primary care physicians like myself share for perimenopause and menopausal women in the exam room?
Well, how much of what we call pathology is actually the body adapting to certain conditions, and how often the problem is not the body, but how the internal environment actually works and the expectations we're placing on it. So when we realize that women are not non-compliant, they're physiologically mismatched to the advice they're receiving. And that reframing can be incredibly relieving for both sides. Women need help addressing four important issues: food, stress, light exposure, and sleep. Once those are done correctly, fat release becomes possible.
So, from your research in your book, why is this message not getting out? Why has it taken so long for this metabolic reframing to get through to mainstream medicine and mainstream health advisors?
Because medical professionals are not taught human nutrition beyond what it takes to help someone survive an acute accident or condition. They're not taught what actually nourishes the human body. So I would hope that clinicians begin to delve further into human nutrition and what actually nourishes the body, not just the kind of food that parades as food, but real food that deeply nourishes the human body. And they're not taught that because the the medical institution basically is funded by big pharma and big food, and they've got to make a living. So doctors are taught to treat symptoms, not find and treat the root cause. So take this pill, take that pill,
Mhm.
and they've done their job as far as they've been taught. Now, I know there are a lot of medical professionals out there who have a deep desire to really help their clients, and that starts with knowledge. Human nutrition is game one.
So, in addition to nutrition, light therapy, sleep, I believe one of the things is, of course, exercise as
Mhm.
muscle mass decreases as one ages. Talk more about the role of exercise and strength training as women go through the menopausal phase.
Sure. Exercise comes next after food. Food is your foundation. Exercise helps that along. Because estrogen and progesterone are declining, the body needs to feel safe. And one of those ways to relieve the external stress is through exercise. My husband and I do intense strength training session twice a week. We go to Planet Fitness. It's inexpensive. They've got all the weight machines that we need. We take ourselves very quickly through an entire body workout in about 23 minutes. And that puts a lot of good stress on the body. When the muscles and bones are stressed, it tells them we've got a job to do, so we need to build.
How much exercise typically would you recommend?
I would recommend what Kevin and I do, which is twice a week, high intensity, not high intensity aerobics, strength training, especially as we get older. It's very important
And why that emphasis on strength training?
because it puts a good stress on the body, on the muscles, and on the bones. And it tells them we've got to build. Aerobics doesn't do that.
So, as you know, in the primary care setting, sometimes I only have 10 to 15 minutes with my patients, and we have to go through myriad checklists of things that we need to do. In that 10 to 15 minutes, what are some strongest high impact pieces of advice that you could share with menopausal patients where I can distill some of the messages that we're talking about in short segments?
When they go into the gym to exercise, start with the largest muscle group, which is legs, then go to the back. So do like a leg press, a couple of leg machines, back, pull downs, shoulders, and chest, and then arms. So large to smaller groups. That way they can use their time wisely and the body uses its strength wisely during the workout. And then those other things, food, stress, light exposure, and sleep. Those things help to build muscle mass and bone density.
And then for menopausal or perimenopausal women in the exam room, are there any specific questions they should be asking their clinicians?
Well, I would suggest that women who are offered prescriptions up front, drugs, that they ask, is this the first thing I should do? And almost always the answer is going to be no. Nutrition is number one. That's the foundation that you lay for everything going on in your body.
And in terms of the medications typically offered, like hormone replacement therapy, what's your perspective on that?
My perspective on hormone replacement is that a local hormone replacement is preferable to systemic. When a person takes systemic hormones, I understand that 80% of that is cleared out by the liver. So it takes a lot of hormone to actually get to where it needs to get in the body. Whereas locally applied, such as vaginal estrogen, for instance, can do its job right there at the site. And it makes a big difference. So I tend to stay away from anything systemic that can cause adverse reactions in other areas of the body.
You mentioned that you are, of course, researching for a book on perimenopause and menopause. Anything that's underreported, anything that surprised you during your research?
The fact that 75% of women walk out of their doctor's office after having sought help for menopause symptoms, that is a big surprise to me. I mean, 75% leave empty-handed, not even with a prescription. So it's a very big gray area for clinicians. The field is wide open for them to learn and learn what really makes a difference for these women.
So you're saying that 75% of these women, they're not leaving with really any advice to help with their symptoms?
That's right. Now, these days, a lot of them will be given a prescription for Ozempic, a GLP-1 agonist. The body makes its own GLP-1. We just have to give it the right tools to do so.
We're talking to Marsha Whitt, metabolic health educator. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Eat Less, Move More Fails for Midlife Weight Loss. Marsha, let's end with take-home messages they want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Focus less on suppressing intake and more on restoring regulation. Stabilize glucose through adequate intake of protein and fat, preferably animal-based, and reduce carbohydrate consumption to place the body in the best possible position for muscle and bone maintenance and sleep. thereby reducing stress and enhancing recovery. When the system feels safe, fat loss often follows.
Marsha, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Have a good day.